financial freedom. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We've got a big subhead here: how to dream, save, and invest your way to get there. And what Jamie didn't tell you about my background is that I started off probably like many of you. I graduated from school with school debt. I had a modest paying job, but I'm here today to tell you that the things you're going to learn today are the same things that I did over the years, and they allowed me to be blessed with the resources I now have to be able to retire in my 50s. So regardless of when you're going to retire or how much money you're making, I promise that after these 2 sessions, and I think you understand there are 2 sessions, which I'll explain in a minute, you will be in a financial situation way, way better than you're in right now. And if I've done that, I will feel that I've done a good deed trying to pay it forward, taking the financial freedom that I've learned about and giving you the tools to do the same. So with that, we'll get into it. First, I'm going to encourage you to take a deep breath and exhale slowly, like we're in a yoga class. Anytime anybody hears the word money, they get all weirded out, right? Because money can be a complicated thing to talk about. But happily, I'm here today to tell you and reassure you that complicated, which is the way most people make it, is not necessarily better. In fact, what we're going to be talking about is very simple. You're going to hear no jargon. As Jamie said, I have a degree in business, but you don't need a degree in business to be able to follow the principles you're going to learn today. And equally importantly, you don't have to hire anybody and spend a lot of money having somebody babysit you and your money. No one's going to care more about your money than you are. And armed with the tools you're going to learn over these 2 sessions, you can do this on your own.
Oh, no. Yeah, keep turning. No, that's not like.
Can that person please mute themselves?
First row.
Jamie,
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Bruce. Just a
okay,
second.
sure.
There we go.
Okay. I mentioned about not having to pay anybody to do this for you. This includes me. I want to state this right up front. I think you saw it in the materials that Jamie sent out. But this is not a sales pitch, some infomercial on TV where there's a big bill that they're going to hit you with at the end. Everything I'm offering to you today and going forward is absolutely free. If you wind up taking the advice that I give you and putting it to use, I make $0. If you ignore everything I did today, I make $0. I'm doing this solely as a way of dedicating my retirement to helping people learn about financial security and how to get there. Equally importantly, if you wind up implementing and doing some of the plans that I'm going to talk about today, I don't take control of your money. I don't see your bank accounts. I don't see anything. So there's no opportunity for any funny business. So everybody, please relax. The money is all in your hands. All I do is offer suggestions, and you are free to follow them or not. I hope that's all clear. Everybody? Okay. So let's get started. This is kind of a team effort. I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do and what you're going to do. On my side, as I said, I'm going to give you a simple plan. We're going to walk through it step by step. And on your side, obviously, you have to take control of your money. So there's a couple things you're going to have to avail yourself of. First, anytime you see this little tool thing, this is an icon for a bit of homework, something you're going to have to do to manage your money. And anytime you see this chain link icon, that means I will give you a live link to resources that we won't have time to go through today, but that you can refer to at your leisure at home when we're done with the session. All right. I said at the outset with my big subhead at the beginning, we're going to talk about dreaming about our future, saving for it, and investing for it. We're going to start with the dream, which is what I call the big why. And that's a fancy term for try to picture yourself. I know this is going to be difficult. Try to picture yourself 10, 20, 40 years from now when you might want to retire, and ask yourself, what would financial freedom look like when you're that age? What do you want to be able to do with your life, assuming you're blessed with the joy and inner peace of knowing you don't have to work anymore? So think for a moment about what your goal would be for that period in your life. And for most people, this thing, and it's also your big why as you move along toward retirement. Everybody has a different sense of what this may be. Here's a little chart that shows what some people might think of. They have a financial freedom goal of getting out of debt, being able to afford a home or a condo, traveling, giving to charity. Just take a bit, look at this chart for a moment. And then in the chat, think about what financial freedom would mean to you, whatever stage in life you are. Working your way out of debt, thinking about retirement years from now. Just type in the chat a couple words and Jamie can read them back to us about how you see what your future would look like if you were out of financial problems. So we'll take just a second for that. Don't be shy. There's no right answer. It's whatever your future looks like to you and what's important to you.
While we're waiting, I'll throw mine in that
Okay.
the picture I have in my head is that my kids would not worry about finances as I have.
Ah, that's a great one.
We have travel, volunteer, and have time for fun things like photography.
That's wonderful. I'm a photographer too. I love that.
Self-care, owning property, a home, and travel.
Great answer too. Take one more second. Anybody else?
Same as me, as Jamie.
Oh, okay.
Leave
Cool.
my kids with financial security, traveling, giving generously to charity,
Yes.
like Compassion Prison Project,
Ah, good.
own a home,
Cool.
afford acres of land, build a
Ah.
gorgeous retreat space, and travel. Wonderful.
Well, those are all fabulous. Bravo to you. And we're going to own this feeling in a minute. I'm going to show you what I want you to do with it as you give it more thought. But first, why this is so important. Planning for your future, whether it's 10 years from now or 20 years from now, that's a long period of time. But by keeping in mind that big goal, that big why that we just talked about, that will give you the stamina to work toward that goal where it's, I'm about to spend money on something, but I go, no, my big why is so important. I'm going to forego spending on that thing so I can have the travel, the photography, the giving to my kids, et cetera, that we all just talked about. So here's your first piece of homework, not for now. And I know it's too important for us to just come up with in 5 or 10 seconds. But when you're off the line, just thinking privately in the comfort of your own place, be very specific and write this thing down, write your big why down and put it on a sticky note that you put on your refrigerator or on your mirror or on your closet door so you look at it every day. And here's how I've stated it. I want financial freedom by the time I am, be very specific about an age that you're shooting for, so I can, and then right here, fill in your big why goals, okay? By doing that, you give tangibility to this dream. You made it something very specific that you're committing to. And equally importantly, you're going to take personal financial responsibility for achieving those goals, with emphasis on the word personal. Why is that so important? Well, ask yourself, I'm going to ask these rhetorical questions. For those of you on the phone right now, could you live comfortably on what is today an average Social Security of about $1,500 a month? For $1,500 a month, could you achieve the financial freedom that you want? Rhetorical question number 2, do I expect to inherit a fortune to be able to afford my big why? Can I count on winning the lottery? Does the work I have guarantee me a big pension where I don't have to worry as much about saving? Am I lucky enough to have my name be Beyonce or LeBron James? Okay, I'm guessing, and maybe you can put it in the chat window, whether you answer yes or no to these questions. I'm going to guess we're going to have a lot of no's. Is that correct?
Bruce, I also want to toss in there, I don't think you had mentioned that you're going to share this deck with everyone afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. That's an excellent point. Thank you, Jamie. At the end of this session, we're going to talk about next steps. And one of them is that you're going to be getting a link to a soft copy presentation. In that presentation will be all the links that we're going through now. So don't feel like you have to write all this down. Just take notes on the important parts to you. But yes, we will be giving this to you. The other thing, just to set the stage, in addition to the 2 sessions that we're going to have this week and next week, I am also going to be offering private one-on-one Zoom calls at absolutely no cost. So you can go through your own personal things that either you're confused about after the class or you didn't feel comfortable bringing up in a large group. I will be offering that in the future too. So please, I've got a ton of people that have already from my other classes signed up for that so they can get personal private consulting along the way. Because I always want you to feel that you have a lifeline to somebody who can help you through the process. But thank you for bringing that up.
You know, sorry, one thing I'll add to that, Bruce, is that
Yes.
if someone does want to ask a question now but doesn't really want to pose it to everybody, you're welcome to direct message me, send the message directly to me, and then I'll relay it to Bruce without relaying any names.
Terrific. So yes, either raise your hand if you want to go public or send a note to Jamie and he will interrupt me so I don't just yammer on for too long. And we want this to be interactive and we don't want you to get derailed by a question you have in your head right now and then you're not listening for the rest of the presentation. Just very interactive. Anytime you want, we'll call a timeout and I'll be happy to answer. Okay, but I'm guessing, Jamie, did you get a lot of no's on this? Did folks?
No, nobody responded.
Oh, okay.
I will throw in my no.
Okay, so I'm going to assume Beyonce's not on the phone call and most of you aren't going to inherit a lot of money, which is the reason it's up to you. We have to be personally responsible for achieving our goal of financial freedom. And by the way, here's a link here where you can go online to Social Security and based on your work history to date and how much money you've earned, if you were to retire today, it'll show you, if you stopped working today, it will show you what you would qualify for Social Security. Now, as I said, I'm guessing you answered no to this question of, am I going to have other sources of money other than myself? And so now let's look at some of the numbers. What exactly is financial freedom? It's having enough money for those of you who are in debt to get out of debt and stay out of debt, and then ultimately to be able to live your big why. We're going to start by looking at where everybody is today. It's a good place to start is at the beginning, right? So we're going to look at what we call your current money situation. You remember this from your homework. Remember, here's that little icon here. I hope all of you did it. If you don't, you can do a rough idea of your head as we go through this. But the first assignment you had was to see where you stand on money today. We asked you to add up all you own, meaning that's a fancy name for assets, your bank account, if you have any stocks or bonds or savings accounts, adding up all you own, and then adding up all you owe, which is a debt. It could be a credit card, a personal loan, or whatever, and then subtract those two numbers. If the number you came up with is greater than 0, that means you own more than you owe. And that's what we call your positive money situation. So if you have $10,000 in the bank and you owe 1,000, that means I'm to the positive $9,000, right? 10 minus 1. On the other hand, your number may have been less than 0, where what you owe is more than what you own. Again, an example, you have $3,000 owed on a credit card and you only have $1,000 in the bank. 3 minus 1 is a -2, meaning you're underwater by $2,000. Now, those of you who are in this situation, I want to quickly add, don't panic about it. Remember I said at the beginning, deep breaths. We're going to get through this. You're going to be getting practical ideas today that will help you get out of debt. Okay, so here's where we're going to have our one of, I think, 2 polls during the meeting. Jamie's going to put up a poll where we want to know, again, privately, if you're in the positive money situation or in the negative money situation, where you'll answer yes if you own more than you owe, and you'll answer no if you owe more than you own. Oh, and Ms. Tovar has a question. Actually, it's a little more complicated. It's, as you'll see here, a three-part question on 2 questions. But while we're doing that, Ms. Tovar wanted to ask a question, I think.
Yes, I do. And I'm glad I'm attending this, but everything is 0-0 because everything that I get, I have 3 jobs, and everything that I make is going to all of the mishaps that life is throwing at me right now.
Yes.
So I have 0 in savings, just my checking, which
Yes.
gets depleted. And then I have my place, which is $17.75, but I don't have anything saved or anything like that. So I'm not in either bracket. I'm basically living day to day.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're exactly at 0, right? Because what you're bringing in every month is going out every month, since you're not below water or above water, right? Correct?
Right. I'm just trying to keep my head above water though.
Right,
But
okay.
I can't pay for anything.
Okay. So, and I know you feel that way right now, and I'm sure it looks that way, but hang with me. And over the course of the next 30 or 40 minutes, we're going to be giving you practical ways to make that 0 start to creep up to become a positive number, okay? Does that sound good? Hello?
It was a thumbs up. She gave a thumbs up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Okay, so it looks like we have about 58% of the people have some or deep debt, 43 with no significant debt. That's great. And on the savings side, again, people that are more like Ms. Tovar, who are close to 0 or at 0, about 3/4 you have some savings, and then a nice group, 1 out of 7 people at the top, who are much more comfortable. Well, that helps me as we go through this. But here's the neat thing, because you folks are all over the map in terms of what your current money situation is. Thank you for that, by the way, for submitting on that. Just going to clear my screen for a sec. Jamie, how do I get the poll off my screen?
You should be able to just say, you should be able to close the window in the upper left
For
corner.
some, let's see.
I ended it. You should be able to just close the window.
Yeah. Yeah, the bar at the top was covering the thing, but I got it. Okay. All right. So we've talked about the dream part. We've talked about the situation you're in now. And what I started to say was the savings things that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this session apply no matter where you were on that chart. If you're in debt, we're going to be talking about living on less than you make, even though it's tough, like Ms. Tovar was talking about, and use the money that we can turn up to get out of debt. And then once we're out of debt, the 40% of those of you who have some savings or a bit more, start setting aside the money for your future. And then in step 2, we're not going to be talking about investing today. All we're going to be talking about today is getting out of debt and savings. In step 2, which will be 1 week from today, we're going to talk about how you then take the money when you're above water, when you own more than you owe, and how you take that money. And we're going to learn about all kinds of investments, but forget about that for now. You shouldn't even be thinking about that. Your job 1 is getting out of debt and beginning to save. So savings is about 4 things. What will I save for? How much should I save? When should I start saving? And then most importantly, how do I make it easier to save? This is where I'm going to give you the 8 tips on getting out of debt. We'll start with what are we saving for? This is what we've been talking about for the first couple minutes. Remember, you're either in debt or you're not in debt, right? Or you're at zero. If you have debt, what we're going to be talking about now is using every dollar that you can turn up every month in free savings and using that to pay off debt. Only after you do that do I want you to think about investing for your future. Otherwise, what that means in effect is if you have debt and you try to invest while you have debt, in effect, what you're doing is you're borrowing money, staying into debt to be able to invest. And I know that sounds a little complicated. Let me give you a very simple example so you can see what I'm talking about. Let us say, for sake of argument, that you have $10 in debt and $1 in savings, and you're thinking about putting that savings into an investment of some kind. Now think, instead of doing that, if I took the $1 I'm about to invest and I applied it against the $10 in debt, suddenly I have $9 in debt. Is everybody with me on that?
Yeah.
No? Okay. So let's say you've done that. So you have $9 in debt and nothing in savings. Now you go into debt, you go the other way. You go back to $10 in debt to have the $1 in savings to invest. In effect, what that meant is your debt is $1 higher than it needed to be because you decided to start investing before you paid off your debt. That is not a good idea. So I hope everybody's clear on that. What we're going to be talking about is paying down the debt to zero before we start investing. Is everybody clear on that? I hope.
Yep.
Any yeses?
Yep, you're getting answers.
Terrific. Okay. But once you're out of debt, we're going to talk about investing for the future. So bottom line, what this means is saving for your financial freedom starts when you owe nothing and your money situation is greater than zero. How much should you save? I know this is a goal. It's going to be tough for some of you, but hang with me before you say you can't do it. Our goal is that you take 15% of what you make before taxes and try to earmark that for debt reduction or savings. Again, same goal whether you're in debt or not. If you do just this one thing, you're going to be in the top 10% of Americans because the vast majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck and are not saving anything. So if you can start looking to do 15%, that makes you a superstar in money management in America. And then this is not for now, but down the road, you hope that your income will go up over time. And as it does, you're able to save more of the extra money you're making. Because think about it, if you got a nice raise tomorrow, your car payment didn't go up, your rent didn't go up, your electric bill didn't go up. So you're able to save more money than 15% out of the bonus or the new raise that you got. But for right now, we're going to keep it simple and say our target is to try to find a way to save 15% of what we make before taxes to apply against, for most of you, debt, for the others for savings. So what that means in simple numbers, if you're making $1,000 a month before taxes, you'd want to put away $150 of that against debt. When should you start to save? Well, obviously it's never too late, but mathematically the way life works, the earlier you start, the earlier the following things will happen. Obviously, the sooner you'll get out of debt. If you're doing that 15% every month, you'll pay off your debt quicker than if you're doing nothing against it, obviously, right?
So Bruce, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Will you touch on, so you mentioned the 15% and it sounds great.
Yes.
But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you don't have that 15%.
Absolutely. And one of the, I think I said at the beginning, we're going to be talking about my tips for getting out of debt. In this group of 8 tips will be what you need to do to have a better shot at saving 15% from what you're making. Yes, I understand. That's a great question. Your current situation is you're saving nothing. I'm going to give you tips on how to figure out a way to start saving some money.
Thank you.
Okay. So think about it. As soon as you get out of debt, you have more years remaining in your working life to be able to invest for your future. And lastly, and this is called the miracle of making money on your money, the less you have to put aside every year to meet your financial dream. Because the more years you have for your money to be making money, the less you have to put aside each year to make that happen. And I have a chart that will show you this very dramatically. Remember there was that TV show 10 years ago or 5 years ago, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? If anybody remembers that? Well, I'm just arbitrarily picking the number $1 million. If you say you want to save $500,000, just cut these numbers in half. But they show you how much you'd need to save every month until you hit 65 to make $1 million in your retirement plan. If you started when you're really young, right out of school at 25, it would take you about $381 a month to save $1 million. If you wait till you're 30, that number goes up to $555 a month, and so on. You see, the later you start saving, the fewer number of years you have left till 65, and the more you'd have to save every month. The point is, the earlier you start, no matter what this goal is, no matter what your retirement year is that you're thinking about, the earlier you start, the better. Okay. How do I make it easier to save? This is what you're all here to learn about. And I love this line. It's not from me, but somebody came up with it. Many of us have too much month left at the end of our money. Anybody in that category? But in the chat room, say yes if you find yourself in that. I have too much month left at the end of my money. Are we seeing any yeses?
You are, yeah.
Okay, that nothing to be ashamed of. Plenty of us have been there. And so that's why we're going to spend the bulk of today not giving you theory, but very, very practical things you can do to start making it easier to save. Remember, I said 8 ways, no matter whether you're paying off debt or building for your future. I'm going to ask you to pinky swear, solemnly swear that you'll follow the tips that I'm going to give you today. If you do it, it'll help you save as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And remember your end goal, whether it's saving to get out of debt for your kids' college education or whatever. By doing this now, it'll make it totally worth it because you'll be able to achieve your dream. I'm not saying it's completely easy, like, life is tough, but if you follow these tips, I will make it easier for you to achieve it. Okay, step 1, tip number 1, it's called pay myself first. What does that mean? It means pretend that the money you're trying to put aside for debt or savings is a bill, okay? So when you do your monthly budget, which we're going to talk about in a minute, put aside on a piece of paper 15% of that number, like we talked about, before taxes, for debt reduction or savings. Just put that on the piece of paper. This simple step of saying to myself, I don't have that money, is one of the most effective things you can do, because mentally saying that money doesn't exist will keep you from spending it as if you don't have it, okay? You put it aside and say, I'm going to live on the remaining 85% of what I have, because 100 minus 15 is 85, right? And so you make in your budget that 15% a budget item, just like you would your rent or your car payment. So that's homework number 1. When you're going to do this budget that we're going to talk about, if you haven't done it already, at least for now, write on that piece of paper 15% out of your paycheck for savings. And again, by savings, we mean against debt if you have debt, against long-term investing if you're out of debt. Tip number 2, live on the remaining 85% by doing, notice it's in italics, a written budget every month. This doesn't mean like you kind of have it in your head. You literally put on a piece of paper, It's critically important when you've been living paycheck to paycheck to do a written budget. Again, a great line from somebody: if you don't tell your money where it should go, you'll always wonder where it went. Has anybody been in that situation? At the end of the month, you go, you know, I didn't think I had that many expenses, but my checking account is pretty much empty. Anybody ever been in that situation?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, I hear you. We've all been there. So what do I mean by a written
There's
budget?
hand waving.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I see hands waving in Missouri.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. We have this tool here, remember, a monthly budget. And I'm going to encourage you to go back on this budget tool and every month do your budget based on what you think your expenses are going to be on the next month. And you're going to put 15% at the bottom of the sheet that you're going to see here in the link. There is a section called savings and debt reduction. Remember, that's how we've been talking about it. You put 15% in that, and then I'm going to encourage you to challenge, notice it says in all caps, every item on your budget list. And I want you to pay particular attention to the difference between needs and wants. What's neat about the tool that I'm giving you is, like on some budget tools, it simply says, you know, here's 20 different things you could spend your money on in a month. The tool I'm giving you just very simply divides your expenses into two chunks. The chunk at the top says needs, and the chunk at the bottom says wants. And the needs group is a pretty small one. It's your essential bills that you must pay. You have to pay your rent. You have to make your car payment if you have one, otherwise they take away your car. You have to pay your electric, otherwise the lights go off and you freeze, right? Those things are absolutely essential that you can't get out of, at least for now. The rest of the sheet, though, are the wants, the miscellaneous things, the things that you don't absolutely have to buy. You may have thought you did until you really see them as a want. And so I'm going to ask you, plead with you, to concentrate on the wants and try to cut back on those. So let's talk about those. These are some rhetorical questions, but it's the difference between saying to yourself, I need this and I want this. And I want you to discipline yourself to ask the same question on every expense on your list. Here's a couple of examples. Do I really need my daily latte at the coffee shop? You know, I'm spending $4 on the latte. I can make coffee at home for 30 cents. That new outfit or electric gadget, you know, the iPhone with the 3 cameras, my old phone is working perfectly fine. I mean, myself, I'm not ashamed to tell you this, I have an iPhone 7, okay? I'm 6 generations behind, but I'm perfectly content with the phone I have because it still works. Do I need to go out to dinner this often or at these kinds of places based on, you know, what the average entree costs there? We're coming up on the holidays. Do I need to give a gift that's this expensive? Give you a quick sidebar. I did one of these classes a couple of weeks ago. The woman is in a very modest income situation. Her money situation is not good. She's a single mom. She was planning to spend $2,000 on the holidays for her kids. By the time she was done with our session, she got that down to $100 or so and said, we're going to bake cookies. I'm going to spend time with the kids. I'm going to tell them Santa's only bringing one thing this year. But the point was that need of spending $2,000 suddenly became $100 when she really thought about it. See the other things, premium cable channels, like how many things can we watch in a day? Or a new car, which we'll talk about in a minute. But just think about those. If you can concentrate on whittling down those needs, you will make whatever amount of income you're making go further than it is now. I also don't want to sound like a complete hard person here and say, I want you to live like a hermit and, you know, never get anything nice. I don't mean that at all. But until you're out of debt, I'm going to encourage you that occasionally it's nice to treat yourself or your family with some of the wants. But until you're out of debt and on your way to financial freedom, spend mostly on the needs, a little on the wants, and take the cash that you free up to get rid of that debt. I promise you, the inner peace that you will achieve by getting rid of the debt and not having the stress and beginning to see your bank account grow, that is worth far more than whatever any of us could buy for ourselves or our kids. Okay. Assuming we're now doing the first three things that I talked about, paying myself first, working on a budget, only looking at needs and not wants, this hopefully will start turning up some money that you can use to pay against debt, which brings us to step number 4. Go after your debt like a maniac to pay it off quickly. And I'm going to encourage you, again, with the yes or no, for those of you that have debt, do you have more than one debt or a single debt? If you have more than one debt, can you please respond with a yes? And if it's just one debt alone, respond with no. So yes means I have more than one debt, and no means I only have one debt. And Jamie will tell us how we're doing on that.
It's all yeses so far. And you have a question here, but I know you're going to be addressing this, or you are addressing this, is what if I've already done all of this and still don't have enough to put the 15% away?
Okay, we will talk about that. I'll see how this person feels after hearing item number 8, but that's a great question. Okay. But for those of you now who answered yes to this one is particularly relevant to you. I'm going to encourage you, look what it says here, pay off your smallest debt first and then work up to the bigger ones. Let me explain how this works. Let's say you have 3 debts, the smallest, the medium, and the bigger one, okay? For the medium and the bigger one, only make the minimum monthly payment required on that debt. You do not, repeat, do not want to get behind and get thrown into collections. So you make the minimum payment on debt 2 and 3, and the rest of the money you're able to put aside every month, you put 100% of that money against the smallest debt. By doing that, you will wind up paying off the smallest debt much quicker than you would the middle or the top debt, which is why I'm recommending this. There's a psychological thing that says, okay, I've got 3 debts on the piece of paper. We all have this magic thing where we like to check the box off and say that's done. So by paying off the smallest one first, you'll get an early win in this process and say, hey, I'm now down to only 2 debts to pay off. And then you'll do the same thing with the remaining 2. You'll make the minimum payment on the biggest one, and that what's now the smallest one, which was number 2, you'll put all the money you have against that debt. And the point is, you will build momentum over time. If you go the other way and say, okay, I'm going to try to attack the biggest mountain of debt first, that's going to take you a lot longer than paying off the smaller ones. And you won't get the traction. You won't get the high of being able to get a win and a small success by paying off the little one. So forget about the interest differences between the loans. That's not a big deal because we're going to move quickly on these. The more important thing is getting them paid off quickly. And so let's work our way smaller to medium to larger. Number 5. Okay, this is for down the road for many of you. Once you're out of debt, commit to never, ever, ever, and I could put 5 more nevers on this chart, ever getting into debt again. Think about how you feel, how the tightness in your stomach and your throat every month when you look at the debt you have. When you can breathe and see that debt gone, you say, okay, I'm not beating myself up. A lot of people have debt, but now that I've found the promised land and I'm on the other side, I am not going back. The only exception to this, I know there was somebody who put on their list wanting to own a home and acres of land. It's okay to have, my one exception is a home mortgage, because buying a house is so expensive. To be able to pay cash for that is pretty much unthinkable for everybody. That it's okay to consider having a mortgage, but with very tight controls. Only up to 25% of your income, because you don't want to be what's called house poor. That means where you're paying so much on your house, you have no other money to live on. And if that means, by the way, that you can only afford a 2-bedroom house instead of a 3-bedroom, or a condo instead of a 1-bedroom house, or you have to drive farther to work because the area you want to live in is too expensive. My answer to that is, I'm sorry, but so be it. That's the way math works. And it's better to buy, if you decide you ever want to have a house, that you want to own one. It's not so important to buy a house that you put yourself into a strangle amount of debt and can't afford the other savings you're going to need to live on, because your house doesn't pay you a dividend every month in your savings account to live on. Your money is tied up in your house. So please, please, please only consider a mortgage on a house, but nothing else. You see this list here: student loans, personal loans, credit cards, car loans, which we're going to talk about in a minute, both car loans and credit card because they're so popular. All of these things keep you from having financial freedom. So please, when you're out of debt, don't go back in. Step 6, I said credit cards and car loans. We'll talk about this. Never, ever, ever, with 4 more ever, carry a balance on a credit card. You may have some now. Like I said, we're not going to beat ourselves up over that. But once you're out of it, don't go back. Credit cards, this is true. Credit cards can be as addictive as drugs. People just spend, spend, spend. And here's an important part that I read about from some research that I didn't even know. Some of you may pay off a credit card every month, which is terrific. But even if you think you're disciplined to pay it off every month, there are 2 kind of watch outs that I want to point out. 1, research shows that people spend more with a credit card than when they pay with cash or check. Think about it this way. If any of you has ever been to a casino, you know that a casino uses plastic chips. Why do they use plastic chips as opposed to stacks of money? Because the chip is like fake money. When you see it raked off the table, it doesn't hurt as much as if you saw your cash being raked off the table. So psychologically, they show you your money in a symbolic way so you'll gamble more. It's the same thing with the credit card. When you're not putting out the cash on the table at Macy's, or writing a check or using your debit card, it doesn't hurt as much. So even if you are paying off your credit card, be very mindful that you might be overspending because you go, well, I'm going to handle it at the end of the month. And second part of this, even if you think you're disciplined, best laid plans of mice and men, as they say, you may still not pay it off because life intervenes, you got a little sloppy, you overpaid. And so watch that. Even if you think you're going to do it, you might not. And then for the rest of you, the ones who are honest enough to say, I'm not disciplined enough, I would treat this like an addictive drug. For the rest of you, cut up those credit cards starting now. At least don't get any deeper into debt than you are right now. Vow to pay them off as quickly as possible. And don't think about all the rewards and things that sucker people into credit cards. If you have a credit card now and carry a balance, you are probably paying somewhere around 20% or more in interest. So we're going to keep some simple math here. If I'm paying out 20% in interest to get a 1% or 2% cash back, can we all do that math? That means I'm losing 19 or 18% a month based on some stupid reward thing. It is not worth it. You're buying the award and going into debt. And that's why the credit card companies offer that little thing to keep you hooked. So forget about doing that. Stop using a credit card and start paying for everything with cash, check, or debit card. Number 7, this is probably kind of unthinkable for any of you on the phone right now, but on the Zoom call, but I'm giving you a number that's dramatic enough to illustrate my point about new cars. Don't even think about ever buying a new car until you have a major net worth. And even then, you should only consider spending about 5% of that on a car. So think about it. If you were blessed enough to have saved $500,000 and you went out and bought a $50,000 imported car, you would have just put 10% of your life savings in something that goes down in value. Have we all heard of the word depreciation? That's a fancy name for the plain spoken way of saying things that drop in value. So you don't build net worth and reaching your big why by putting your money in things that are losing money. It's just basic math, okay? You also may think, well, I've got this old car and I'm worried about it breaking down. You may want a new car or think you want and need a new car, but you do not need a new car, okay? Until you get to the point where you have a lot of money saved, you should only save up and pay cash for a low mileage, reliable used car. Get it checked out by a mechanic to make sure it's okay. And when you buy that car, I meant save up and pay cash. That means no leases, no loan, because those are fancy names for debt, right? You're just borrowing money now to buy a car. Only buy a car that you can afford to pay for cash. And remember what the principle I've been trying to lay out throughout this: you don't build financial freedom by owing other people money, whether it's a credit card company, a personal loan company, or your automobile company. You make money, or you achieve financial freedom by earning money for yourself, not paying other people interest. The last point on this list, and this goes back to the person who asked earlier about, and I'm not sure they were doing steps 4, 5, and 6, and 7 yet, but let's say they were. What if after doing all this, I'm still not making headway? And that's what I want to talk about here. I call this a tough love suggestion because it is tough love that I'm about to present. Please don't take my head off. I am completely appreciative and sensitive to the fact that you've all probably had very tough lives, very tough financial situation. I don't want to look like I'm not acknowledging that, but I want to give you some thoughts about what to do if what we've talked about so far still isn't enough. So you've done the 7 things, you're still looking for ways to make more progress than you are now. First thing is to say, well, how do I know if I'm making enough progress? And so think of these 2 things at the bottom of this chart. Number 1, if after tightening your budget, trying to save the 15%, only looking at needs, not wants, I'm still not saving 15% of what I made before taxes, that's warning sign number 1 that we're not making enough progress. And warning sign number 2 is, okay, I'm doing this, I'm putting aside the 15%, but I'm not on a pace to pay off my debt in 2 years or less. So let's say, for example, somebody owes $5,000 in debt. They're making $1,000 a month, keep the math simple. That's $150 a month to go against the debt. $150 a month times 12 is $1,800 a year against debt. And in 2 years, $1,800 is $3,600, right? But we're trying to pay the debt off in 2 years, but we have $5,000 in the debt. This person would take almost 3 years to do it. So that's another warning sign. I'm making progress, but I want to get that debt out of my life as quickly as I can so I can start doing that chart that I showed you that gets me to be a millionaire or save $500,000. So what do we do in this situation? This chart is basically explaining that life does not give us a pass on math. You have really only 2 alternatives. Either we have to get our income up or our expenses down. What can we do? 1, remember we talked about what goal I have at what age for my financial freedom. One thing you can do is delay that age, because if you work longer than you were planning to work, that gives you more years to be able to save the money you need to save. Another thing you can do, you can say, okay, I had these, a number of people talked about having travel as a goal for the future. Maybe their travel goal was to go to Europe, or making that up, but say that was a thing. They could cut back and say, okay, I don't quite have enough money for that, but I can still take a very nice vacation in the United States. So those are 2 things we can do. Delay retirement or look to our future and say, okay, we can spend less once we get there. Your only other alternative, if we've really ratcheted down our expenses and we really are being sincere about the needs and wants, our only other opportunity is to get our income up. And again, I realize a lot of you are working very hard now, and it may sound unimaginable to get your income up, but I want to give you a few ideas of things to consider. One, if you're blessed enough to work at a job that offers overtime or bonus pay for working, on a weekend or something, consider working overtime. For those of you who are in a job where you get more paid based on certifications, like in IT or something, where you learn a new software and you can get a higher pay grade for that, consider training that you could do at night, at a low expense or no expense community college, to be able to get that certification to make more at your current job. Or you go into your boss, say, I'm interested in making more money. What do I need to learn to make more? Or you can take on a part-time second job. And I don't mean, something that's going to be terribly taxing. I'll give you a couple quick examples. Where I live in Los Angeles is an expensive city, but people here make $15, $20, $25 an hour babysitting. They can make that same amount of money walking dogs or pet sitting. So think about whatever financial situation you're in and say, gee, if I could earn $20 an hour babysitting, and I do that 5 hours a week, that's just one night, okay? Or during the afternoon, that's $100 more a week, or over $400 more a month. Think for most of us how life-changing an extra $400 of cash would be in our financial program, either helping us get out of debt or accelerate how much money we're putting in savings. Again, I realize that offering this as an 8-step, you might not want to hear it, but I'm here to, while being sensitive to your situation, be honest enough to tell you what it's going to take. And so, yes, it may not sound pleasant, but think of what the alternatives are. Either never being able to retire comfortably. Think about how scary that would be. Hoping our family will support us. Remember, if we don't have a Rockefeller or a Jay-Z in our name, do we really want to risk that our kids are going to be able to support us? I know I wanted to do it on my own, and I know you folks do too. Or then lastly, circling all the way back to the beginning and the big why, I have this dream for my immediate future and for ultimately retiring. If I don't do these steps, I can't achieve my big why. So hopefully this gives us the enthusiasm and the fortitude to start implementing the 8 things I've talked about.
Bruce, I just want to chime in with a note that Ms. Tovar had sent in saying,
Sure.
InstaWork is a good app as well. You can pick your own schedule. And there are several apps and services like that that allow you to do online work that make it really, really easy. You can, do the work from your own home. You can search for the work from your own home.
I love that. Thank you, Ms. Tovar. That was fabulous. The fact that you can get flexible hours and not have to have the expense of commuting and do it if you have kids when the kids are in bed or on the weekends. What a great idea. Thank you for that. So this chart summarizes the 8 tips we just talked about. And I'm going to ask all of you, I can't see all of you, but I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and pinky swear, as they used to call it, that I hereby promise to implement this financial freedom pledge starting today. Starting with paying myself first and shooting for 15% of what I make before taxes in savings against debt or for future savings. Making and following a written budget at the beginning of each month. I promise to be conscious of the needs versus wants that we spent a lot of time talking about. I'm going to pay off in that mountain of debt. For those of you, most of you had more than one, smallest first and work my way up. I'm going to be disciplined up to never, with 4 more evers, go into credit card debt again or any kind of debt. I'm going to promise not to carry a balance on a credit card. I'm going to not even think about a new car until I have a lot of money. And then finally, if this is still not enough, look for ways to get side gigs to make more money. Okay, we covered a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
I saw, I don't know if you're looking at everybody as well, but I saw a lot of hands up there.
Oh, terrific. No, I haven't seen that. Bravo to you. And thank you for what we've gone over so far. You are already, just by sitting in on today's class and taking part of your valuable weekend, you are already beginning to take the first steps toward financial freedom. Think about what we've covered. Dreaming your big why, like what is your end goal? You've learned about budgeting, getting out of debt, 8 steps to saving to make sure that debt goes away. So give yourselves a big hand. Thank you for being here. And just 2 quick things before we get to take questions, and I'll open up for as long as anybody wants to sit here. There's, back to that homework thing with the little icon, you have a little homework for session 2, and we'll also talk about what we will cover in session 2. First, session 2 will be exactly 1 week from today, December 11th, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 Pacific. You're going to be getting a copy from Jamie, a soft copy, as I said before, of this slide deck. And on this page, you'll see highlighted in yellow all your homework for next time. And I promise it'll take 30 minutes total. And my joke is, yes, you have to devote 30 minutes to doing the homework, but you probably spend more than 30 minutes picking out that new outfit at the store or agonizing over which iPhone to buy. It's worth it for your life savings and your financial freedom.
It's 11 o'clock.
Sorry.
Basically, to spend 30 minutes on your homework. And so this is just a recap of all the little tool icons through it. You have 4 pieces of homework. Go back and really think about your big why and put it on that sticky note. Go back and redo your monthly budget and challenge yourself to get rid of as many of the wants as I can. Try to save 15% of your income against debt right now, and review every month or so our 8 steps to the financial freedom pledge. This is what next time is going to be about. Once we get out of debt and are starting to invest for our future, you will learn about investing. Like, well, what does investing mean, and what kinds of investments are there? Like, I'm sure you've all heard the term stocks or bonds or mutual funds or savings accounts. We're going to walk through, again, in very simple terms, what those things are. We're going to talk about when you put money in them, how they make you money, because each of them works in a slightly different way. We're going to talk about how you decide, with all the various types of investments that are out there, how you would take the money that you have in savings and start dividing it between those investments. And then lastly, like I said, trying to keep this simple, how do we do this all in a way that you don't have to hire anybody and you can do it on your own? I said this at the very outset of the meeting, where I promised that this is not a thing where you sit here for an hour and next week for an hour, and then you go, wait a minute, what did he mean by that? Or what do I do next? I want you to know that you're not alone as you make this journey. I am making available my own time to help you whenever you need help. You'll see when you get a copy of the slide deck, there's this little link here that will enable you to make a personal, private, no cost meeting with me, where we can get into more detail than perhaps you'd feel comfortable sharing on the phone. And we can talk about whatever your personal financial situation is. I'll answer any questions. You can schedule as many meetings as you want. And it's all very simple, available in the link when you get it. But for right now, we're going to open it up for general questions from the group. And Ms. Tovar has one, so she gets to go first.
All right, well, thank you. And excuse the noise in the background. I'm washing on my day off. So I wanted, like when I put in the beginning, you asked like, what did I want to do with my money or savings?
Yes.
My kids are basically all grown. And so I have 3 grandchildren. And my kids, they chose their roads and their careers. And I want to just leave something for my grandkids right now. I'm trying to see if I should even invest in the Bitcoin thing. I think that's too much of an investment for me to lose, trying to keep up with the stocks and me working and things like that. CD accounts, I've had a couple of those over the years. It's worked out for me. So I'm trying to think about that. I know that would be in the next session for my grandkids, if that would be a great option, because they're younger than I am, and they can definitely accumulate more dollars in that account than I can if I'm able to, I don't know how to leave it over, to them or something like that, for them to have access to it. But do you think that it's a good investment to try Bitcoin? Because I was going to try in stocks. So I was trying to do different things to invest my money. And so I'm not just coming out the pocket. I can have money coming in different places. But do you think it's a good idea to have your money in a lot of different places.
Okay, look, you asked a lot of good questions. Let me try to tick through all of them in some order. Are you ready? Okay, starting with Bitcoin or any other kind of cryptocurrency. My answer is emphatically not. Stay a million miles away from anything that has the word crypto in it. And this is not just me and my opinion. Have you all heard of Warren Buffett? He's one of the richest investors in America. You can hear me? Oh,
Yep.
I guess you're on. Okay. Would you like to know what Warren Buffett's impression is of Bitcoin? And then you say yes. Warren Buffett says Bitcoin is, quote, like rat poison squared. Okay? But you're on mute.
That's all you gotta say.
Okay,
So Bruce, I want to throw back at you that so I hear that, and I've been kind of wondering the same things as Ms. Tovar has been.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people making a lot of money with Bitcoin, so that it's hard to accept that that response and just say, oh, okay, Warren Buffett said it, so
okay, I will respond to that. First of all, I'm going to challenge Jamie's thing of a lot of people. For every one person who goes online and brags that they accidentally made a killing in Bitcoin, there are 1,000 people who have lost their you-know-whats in it. Okay, the investment advice you're going to get at the next meeting is what millions and millions of Americans have done to save for their financial future, and it's what Warren Buffett recommends you do as well. Okay, and I will take the advice and counsel of that over anybody who has FOMO, the fear of missing out because somebody it's like saying you can bet on the lottery and you hit the lottery. Yeah, that person made money, but 99.999 people lose the money they put out for the investment. Putting money in Bitcoin is not an investment, it's gambling. Any money you put in it, you should look on it like I flushed it down the toilet. Okay, I wouldn't do it. All right, again, free advice, you do what you want. What you're going to be learning about at the next meeting are simple, sound ways to invest. And I'll just address one of your things and then talk about the bigger picture in a minute. I would not be putting the money in CDs. That's a very, very, very safe investment. But a CD is there just for current expenses, money you need to spend tomorrow. They yield 1 or 2% right now. What I'm going to be recommending historically has earned way, way more than that without substantial risk. Okay, it's basically, the name for it is stock mutual funds and bond mutual funds. It means a collection of stocks and bonds. I'll explain all of it at the next meeting. But again, no crypto, no CDs other than for current cash savings. But then the bigger picture you asked was, gee, I'd like to put aside money for my grandkids for the future. Let me address that because that's even more important than what you invest in. You're a very generous person of spirit to be thinking about the grandkids, and I applaud you for that. But you remember personal financial responsibility. Your first order of business is protecting your own financial goals. So until and if you have enough money saved that you can live a life of inner peace when you hit retirement, you shouldn't be putting aside money for the kids. But what you can do that accomplishes both generosity for the kids and protecting yourself is you can set up your will and estate plan such that when you pass away, which we hope is many, many, many decades from now, that the money skips your kids and goes to your grandkids. That way you have the best of both worlds. You're able to live nicely and comfortably today without jeopardizing your life. And then down the road, if there is anything left at the end of what we hope is a long life, you can bless your kids' kids with some of those resources. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, sure. That's what I'm here for. Thank you. Other people? There's a hand raised from Ruth.
Hi, thanks for all this info.
Sure.
So I've been doing what you're talking about other than the like saving and investing because I have